By now, just about everyone has an opinion about Donald Trump, his life, and his loves. And just about everyone is willing to hazard a guess about his future.
I, Donald John Trump,
a force of nature,
drain the swamp,
a patriot who loves his country, uncontrollable, an unguided missile, unhandled, unmanaged, unscripted, refreshing, tough as nails.
What kind of crap is that?
That about sums it up.
Donald Trump had natural gifts as a child.
He didn't go into New York to expand his father's empire. He went in to build his own.
They always had a great dynamic. They were the golden couple.
A mogul developer told the magazine he likes to flirt.
I've never told this story publicly.
Donald Trump brought excitement to Atlantic City.
Then introduced Donald, this is Melania, this is Donald.
I want to make America great again. I'm going to be able to do it.
Before Donald Trump, all of our presidents had either been governors, U.S. senators, congressmen, or generals.
I said, "Good afternoon, Mr. President. Are you so exhausted?" He goes, "We're just getting started."
A boy from Queens, a Manhattan mogul, a boardwalk emperor, an international playboy, and the 45th president of the United States. Think of the life stories of all the U.S. presidents. None is more unlikely as Donald Trump. Not Teddy Roosevelt, the Rough Rider, Ulysses S. Grant, the underestimated soldier, not even Chester Arthur, the obscure political hack. Nobody had a more incredible rise to the nation's highest office. So here's the question. Who is Donald Trump? A figure unlike any we have seen in the White House. And chances are we won't see another one like him again. That is, unless Trump does it again. The 1950s were a hopeful time to grow up. American troops helped defeat fascism. And when they came home, the baby boom followed. The country was on a roll, and Donald's family prospered.
He grew up in Queens in a pretty well-off family, but not super rich.
Donald Trump reflects fondly on his upbringing.
He was giving an interview, and Trump said, "You know, I'm a quaint guy." And the interviewer said, "Well, you don't strike me as quaint." And he said, "Well, you know, there is a quaintness. You know, sometimes when I'm on a trip, I go out the Grand Central Parkway, which is how you get to his house, and he stops at a particular place, and he looks down the road in his house, and he said, you know, I think to myself, I had a really good start there. I had a really good life in Queens." And for him, I think that's like a rosebud reverie. And it's also something that I think you don't hear much about, which is he's not often known for it, but Trump can be a very reflective man on occasion.
In private, President Trump is very forthcoming about his childhood. He adored his parents and tells people routinely that if you want my kind of energy, you need to go back and get different genes because I had great parents and healthy parents.
An intense work ethic and desire to get rich runs in the Trump family. Donald's grandfather, Frederick Trump, immigrated from Germany in 1885. The young boy started with nothing, but eventually established his family roots in Queens, New York, and planted the seed for the Trump's real estate empire. When Frederick passed away at an early age, his wife and young family had to take over the business. He left behind 5 vacant lots in Queens, which his family then developed into homes. As the oldest son, Donald's father, Fred, had to step up.
Donald had a very strong father. He was a man that had come up from very little and built this major empire.
After school, Fred, who was just 15 at the time, would build the homes, while his 13-year-old brother was the architect, and his 16-year-old sister kept the books. Fred loved his job as a builder, and soon his homes appeared all over.
Fred built middle-class housing in Queens, and so he grew up in a building family, serving the middle class in New York City in the outer boroughs.
By the early 1950s, he was the picture of American success. He upgraded his family from their modest Tudor home to a stately colonial. Fred was all work, and Donald's childhood was largely spent by his father's side.
He was picking up nails on construction sites with his father when he was a child. He understood what it took to get these things done when it comes to development and construction. He lived and breathed that stuff.
I'd say that Trump loved his father. I mean, they had a deep relationship, a loving relationship, but it wasn't an easy relationship. Trump's father was not an easy guy, and Trump himself is not an easy guy. So you can imagine the battle of the Titans.
He wanted his children to be strong and persevering, and they all were.
Trump's mother, Mary, an immigrant from a small town in Scotland, had a softer touch with her son.
Trump had his battles with his father, but his mother gave him unconditional love, that he could do no wrong.
His mother was a very quiet, unassuming woman, but very, very tough, very supportive of her husband in the business. She was also very conservative, but both of his parents were not extroverts the way Donald is.
She ran a strict household, early curfews, no cursing, and summer jobs for their 5 children.
The brothers and the sisters were all very close.
He would often share pictures of the 5 Trump children along with the parents. His older brother, Fred Jr. He was the handsome, strapping one. He was the one that was meant to take over the family business and lead it as the oldest son.
His younger brother, Robert, always played second fiddle to Donald. He was really the apple of everyone's eye. And Donald always had to sort of like fight for his place at bat. And I think that as a child, he sort of became very aggressive, as he is now.
He could also be mean.
He was a bully, and he was a brat, and he's still that way.
Rebellious is a good word for Trump. Unconventional is another word. He went into New York, he bought himself a switchblade knife, and brought it home, and his father was upset that he went into New York and didn't tell him. Trump's father thought he needed a military school to soften the lumps, and he sent him away.
At the ripe age of 13, Donald Trump was sent to the New York Military Academy. He loved the Academy's competitive environment.
Donald Trump had natural gifts as a child. He was bright, he was athletic, he was good looking, and he understood very early that if you were athletic and if you were handsome and if you were dynamic, that gave you certain advantages.
He had the highest grades in geometry, was a top athlete on the field, was voted ladies' man in the senior yearbook, and won the award for the neatest room. While Trump was sent to the military school to fix his bad boy behavior, there was also a side of him that was very compassionate.
When Trump was going away to prep school, his father had a friend whose son was also going to the same prep school. And the father of this young man asked Trump to look after his kid while he was there.
Donald would make sure he delivered on his word to look after the young boy.
He said he was in some trouble, and Donald said, hold on, let me see what I can do. It was arranged that the kid would not suffer any more punishment. He didn't know this guy. He said to his father, okay, I'll look after him, and he did.
Donald was a success at the strict academy.
He learned a lot in military school. He came out a much stronger, much wiser person.
After graduating, Donald attended Fordham University, a highly regarded Jesuit university in the Bronx. A decision he says he made to be closer to his family after his years away at boarding school. Trump's niece claims he only got in because he paid a proxy to take his SATs for him. Donald denies this. After 2 years at Fordham, Trump transferred to the University of Pennsylvania, an Ivy League school and one of the few universities that had a real estate department. By that time, his older brother Fred left the family business to become an airline pilot, leaving Donald next in line to take over the family business.
He was in the real estate business his entire life, so I think it came very second nature to him.
While at Wharton, Trump started investing in Philadelphia real estate, and his college peers described him as more like a professor than student, an advantage that likely came from his childhood, which was largely spent shadowing his father.
His father brought him physically onto a lot of the construction sites, not just touring the final product, but building the foundation, meeting the crews, befriending everyone, being able to work at all levels of the project.
Fred's impact on Donald's real estate career was invaluable, but there was one major point of friction between the two.
He told his father he wanted to go to New York to change the skyline and build great buildings. And his father said to him, look, don't go to New York. They're not our kind of people. And Trump said, Dad, I got to do it. I got to go there. I got to build these buildings. I got to, Dad. I've just got to.
His father argued Manhattan real estate was too risky.
His father warned him that, not to get perhaps too ambitious because they had a great setup and, why would you want to risk that?
Despite any reservations, in 1971, Fred named him the president of the family business. And with that, Donald set out to conquer Manhattan.
He didn't go into New York to expand his father's empire. He went in to build his own. That's the big distinction.
Trump moved into a studio on the Upper East Side and got to work. In addition to breaking into Manhattan real estate, he was also working his way up into the city's social scene.
When we first started hanging out together, he was this brash young man from Queens, a couple of years younger than I, but with soaring aspirations. Someone who wanted to get out from his father's shadow.
Donald was a teetotaler. He says it's because he watched his brother, Fred Jr., develop a serious drinking problem. But he still enjoyed being part of the scene.
The first time I saw Donald, it was in 1971. And I belonged to a club, which is a private club in the Upper East Side. And the minute he walked in, I said to the maitre d' of this club, who is that? He said, it's a new member. His name is Donald Trump.
Trump would come into a room, and it was like a luxury liner cruising into the sea, into the club. He would come rushing in, even when he didn't have a penny in his pocket. He was larger than life. Everybody wanted him to party at their place. And it was nice to follow in his wake as he came rushing in. It was, oh, here's Donald Trump. And who's that behind him? Oh, there's Geraldo behind him.
He was extremely handsome when he was young, and he has a presence about him that's very strong.
What I do remember quite vividly is meeting him in a way where it was kind of playboy meets player.
He liked being in the scene, but he also realized that making it in the New York City real estate was going to be hard, as his father warned him.
Fred was right. They didn't like him. They thought he was some brash upstart who was wet behind the ears, didn't know anything at all about anything, and it was an old boys club, and Donald wasn't in the club, and they were going to make sure that he didn't join because he didn't have what it takes. But he did what he did then, what he does now, which is he tries to show people to give him the respect that he believes that he deserves by accomplishment.
While he had the foundation of his father's multi-million-dollar nest egg and enjoyed perks such as his father's limousine, Donald's ambition quickly outgrew what Fred could provide.
There's no doubt but that Donald Trump got a head start from his dad, from Fred, giving him some money to work with. But Donald Trump took that and made himself a brand. That's all about Trump. That's not about his dad. That's not about his head start. And people who say, oh, he could have done it with his eyes closed, baloney. Baloney. There's a lot of other people similarly situated who went nowhere.
Some do argue Trump would have made more money if he just invested in the stock market. One of Trump's first big moves in Manhattan was the bankrupt Penn Central rail yards. With a number of richer, more experienced developers bidding for the land, Donald got to work schmoozing every bureaucrat and politician involved in the sale. But financing was another issue. The bill was beyond what Fred Trump could afford, so Donald had to get creative, reaching out to government programs and banks. At just 28 years old, with little cash or experience of his own, Trump led pitches showcasing his relentless ambition. It worked. Mid-1970s, the Trump Organization was awarded the option to develop two of the best assets of the bankrupt rail yards. The victory was emblematic of Trump's lofty goals.
Trump is a very smart guy. People who have worked with him know him as very quick on the uptake. He's able to master a lot of detail and come to conclusions about it. He's able to see things that are unconventional. He comes at things from different angles. There's a certain kind of intelligence about that, and the idea that he's anything but smart probably is something you should put away and not put out again.
What Trump wanted to put out was the image of a sharp businessman with a lavish lifestyle. So, while he enjoyed being on the scene, it also served a bigger purpose.
He was always extremely conscious of his image and image building.
But there was another side to him.
Look, he's a regular guy. In other words, he likes a good cheeseburger, he likes a bawdy story, he likes political gossip. He's got actually a pretty good self-deprecating sense of humor.
Donald was a real guy's guy. He came home and had a steak for dinner and watched the football game or the baseball game.
There always have been two Trumps. The guy likes to eat at home. He's a stay-at-home. He doesn't like to go out to parties. He's not a big nightlife person. He'd rather stay at home and do something at home than he would be to go out.
In those days, the city was not at its prime.
Thousands of New Yorkers have given up and moved away because of the crime here and the filth.
New York in the 1970s was beset by violent crime. It was really a tough time for the Big Apple. Violence was everywhere. The racial divide, drug use. You think about the problems now. In those days, it was 5 times more murder.
Trump set out to clean up one particularly nasty parcel in Midtown Manhattan.
The Commodore Hotel was a dump. It was next to Grand Central Station. It was really run down.
A real rat hole, whores and junkies, and a real eyesore that for years was very controversial, and people wanted to knock it down. No one could ever get a deal together.
His father said to him that he thought Trump was nuts. It was like buying a seat on the Titanic.
While everybody else saw a junkyard, 29-year-old Donald saw unlimited potential in a location where countless commuters and travelers passed through every day. To run the operation, he looked to partner with the Hyatt Corporation. They were interested, but would not sign until Donald got the government to pitch in. Trump negotiated an unprecedented contract in which the city provided a 40-year tax abatement, the first ever granted to a commercial property. To date, the break has cost the city over $400 million in foregone revenue.
In 1980, New York is expected to have one of the finest hotels that money can buy. A new $100 million Hyatt Regency is scheduled to go up on the old site of the Commodore Hotel at Lexington Avenue and 42nd Street. As you probably know by now, the 58-year-old hotel was purchased last May by developer Donald Trump, and reconstruction is expected to begin next month.
While Trump embarked on his first big project, there was other exciting activity in the Trump orbit.
When he first met Ivana, we double dated the first night that they went out. We went to the club. First of all, Ivana was fabulous. She was great looking, and she had an air about her of great security. And Ivana and I became best friends immediately.
She's very disciplined, and she's very bright, and she really has a sense of elegance and style.
I've never really known anybody quite like Ivana. She had the determination. She was born in a communist country. Parents actually started her skiing so that she could get out of Czechoslovakia. So Ivana gave him a real run for his money because she was strong, she was a fabulous athlete, and she didn't take any shit from anyone.
It was the energy of Donald, which is my energy, which we are the same, which attract us together so much.
They got married in April of '77, and they became like the perfect couple. She was very confident, he was very confident. And I think it made for a great marriage.
At the age of 30, Donald was married to an immigrant wife, just like his father.
Donald is always boss, and I'm a traditional European girl, and the man is a boss in the family, and it is in our family, and I like it that way.
As it turned out, unlike Donald's mother, playing housewife wasn't for Ivana. She wanted to work. The Commodore project looked like a good place to start.
One day she called me and she said, I'm going to work for Donald. I went, what do you mean you're going to go to work for Donald? I said, you just got married, why do you want to work? She said, no, he just took over the Commodore Hotel. And she said, I'm going to decorate it. So the first couple of days that she went over to speak with the construction people, they sort of like, yeah, okay, you know, it's nice, you know, glad that you're here, Mrs. Trump, and everything. And then they found out that she really meant business. And then they were all at attention.
November 1980, the Grand Hyatt opened its doors.
Real estate man Donald Trump put a brand new outside and a brand new inside on what used to be the Commodore Hotel. Today it officially opened as the Grand Hyatt Hotel. Governor Carey and Mayor Koch and Manhattan Borough President Andrew Stein were among the officials cutting the ribbon today. They all had to do it at the same time and took their cue from Trump.
He converted the Commodore Hotel to the Grand Hyatt Hotel. East 42nd Street was a place where people could walk again, thanks to Donald Trump.
For a time, it was the place to be. I remember what it looked like before he bought it. I remember what it looked like after he redid it. Major signature accomplishment.
An accomplishment for both Donald and Ivana.
Ivana's first toy was the Grand Hyatt Hotel in New York. After taking it over, Donald put her to work overseeing renovations and decor. Her sense of style was such a success, Donald made her head of interior design for the entire Trump empire.
While the Trump empire was expanding, so was their family. At this point, they had 2 kids, the eldest, Donald Jr., and then Ivanka. Donald approached fatherhood much like his own dad.
Donald was all business. He wasn't exactly your typical family man. You know, he always told his kids, if you want to see me, then you're going to have to come work, because he doesn't really take any time off.
While the Grand Hyatt was under construction, he still had the option for the Penn Central Yards at 30th to 39th Street. The city eyed the site for the Javits Convention Center, which Trump hoped to build. They turned him down, but paid him an $833,000 broker's fee. But on Trump's horizon was a structure that would launch the Trump Organization to the top of Manhattan real estate, Trump Tower. All he needed was a location worthy of his vision. He found it on 57th Street and 5th Avenue. He called it the Tiffany location because it was next to the landmark jeweler. Trump could additionally buy Tiffany's air rights, which enabled him to build the largest possible development, an invaluable advantage in Manhattan. But there was one major issue. The existing building was occupied by the department store's Bonwit Teller. So Donald flew to Nashville and convinced the store's owner to let him take over the lease.
A Fifth Avenue landmark has also given up. After 50 years as a fashionable store, Bonwit Teller closed its doors for the last time today.
For Nikki Haskell, who was launching her television career, her friend's ambitious development was the perfect content for her new show.
My television show went on the air in '79. I was the first person to interview Donald when he was building the Trump Tower.
Hi, Donald.
Hi, Nikki.
I'm very proud of what you're doing, changing the face of New York.
Well, we've known each other for a long time, Nikki, haven't we?
Yes, and you always said you were going to do it. Some people say
did.
they're going to do things and they never do.
Okay, thank you, Nikki.
I interviewed Donald about, what his foresight was, what he intended to do with it, what he wanted it to look like.
When he wanted to do Trump Towers, and he wanted to, encase it in glass, and it was really architecturally very innovative.
Donald also needed to secure financing, though he wasn't overly concerned.
Funny thing, if you're doing a small building out in the Midwest someplace and you go for financing, nobody knows the location, nobody knows what it is, nobody knows who you are, nobody knows anything, and you can't get your financing. You do a building on 5th Avenue and 57th Street, and they really want to just take it and just throw it at you. They really come by very easily.
Trump's last hurdle was securing another big tax abatement. While in the past, Trump relied on his father's political allies to ease the process, this time, that would not be the case.
Donald had a lot of problems with the mayor at the time, Mayor Koch. Mayor Koch never liked Donald. They didn't like the fact that Donald got these tax abatements.
Ultimately, Trump succeeded in getting his abatement.
Developer Donald Trump will enjoy the largesse of the city in the form of what the city says is a tax abatement worth $20 million over the next 10 years.
In the midst of Donald's rise in New York City, Trump suffered a life-altering event. His older brother, Fred Trump Jr., who he watched battle with alcohol, passed away.
I think the one that he talks the most about privately would be his older brother, Fred Jr., who died of alcoholism at 42. And that experience for the younger brother, Donald J. Trump, had such an indelible impact on him and the choices he made in his adult life. He said that his brother Fred Jr., he was the handsome, strapping one. He was the one that was meant to take over the family business and lead it as the oldest son, and that he just couldn't beat back all of his demons. That they had tried many times to help his brother, and that eventually his brother succumbed to what is truly a disease, alcoholism.
The impact of Fred and his struggle with booze was something Donald would always carry.
So Donald never drank, never smoked, ever. Used to say to the kids all the time, you will never smoke and you will never drink. And Ivanka used to say to me, how many more times is my father going to tell me that? I said, he's going to tell it to you every day of your life so you don't forget it.
While Donald had become a mover and shaker on the Manhattan real estate scene, he began looking south of New York to the aspiring gambling mecca of Atlantic City.
Atlantic City was initially extraordinarily successful. When casino gambling was legalized there really was no competition.
Trump purchased properties along the boardwalk, but he needed a gaming industry partner. He invited executives from Harrah's to meet him in Atlantic City, but all he had to show them was a vacant lot. So in Trump's telling, he staged a busy construction scene on it, with trucks and bulldozers digging holes and moving dirt around. The ruse worked. Harrah's executives assumed a Trump casino was already underway and agreed to back him.
Trump is building the biggest hotel casino in all of Atlantic City. Harrah's at Trump Plaza is set to open in May.
Back on 57th and 5th, construction of Trump Tower was well underway, and Nikki Haskell was on the ground with her buddy Donald.
From atop the Trump Towers, it's the Nikki Haskell Show, direct from New York.
I watched them build it from day one. I had my mink coat on and my hard hat. The whole focal point of his career at that point was to build this amazing skyscraper and change the face of the view of Manhattan.
Donald's better half was also involved.
Yes, well, Ivana has a great sense of design and fashion and taste, as I think you're probably aware.
For Ivana and Donald, the flashier, the better.
I went with Ivana to Italy, and she bought an entire mountain of pink marble for the entranceway of the Trump Tower. And she had like a road map that she rolled out on the floor where every piece of marble went. It was the most amazing thing I'd ever seen. Donald said to me not that long ago, you know, I still get yelled at because I have that red marble. I said, it's not red, Donald, it's pink. I think he is a fan of it, but it's quite in your face. You know, it's very bold. I don't think that color exists anymore. I think Ivana took the whole mountain.
It's going to have ideal shopping from great retail stores and high fashion, and then office building floors where people work industriously, and then exquisite living on the higher floors.
Exquisite living indeed. The 263 condominium apartments have prices that start at $600,000 and top out at $12 million for a triplex with built-in elevator. Monthly maintenance on that one, $25,000.
The development's opening was the city's biggest social event.
He wanted to change the skyline of Manhattan, which is a grand, grand dream. And his father was saying, no, no, no. And Trump was saying, yes, yes, yes. And he went ahead and he did it.
The elder Trump built an empire of about 22,000 rental units in Queens and Brooklyn that made his son a millionaire the day Donald was born. But it's Donald who, at 34, has succeeded in moving the Trump empire into Manhattan, literally reshaping its skyline.
With the grand opening of Trump Tower, Manhattan's shiniest new object, Donald was on top of the world. Think about it. Rich, handsome, famous. What more could a guy want?